On today's show, we talked about the top 100 and where the Cavs rank yesterday. Well, let's fast forward 1 year from right now. Where do we think the Cavs will rank then? They be ahead? Who will they be behind? Who might join the party? We'll discuss all that and so much more on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name is Danny Cunningham, and you might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. And I just want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching the show on YouTube as we get started here on this Tuesday morning, do me a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for me. Click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs content. Of course, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is here, and right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your first bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. Download the FanDuel app today to get started. We went over yesterday what things look like inside our top 100. If you missed it, at Locked On, we all put together a top 100 players in the NBA. We ranked them 1 through 100. The Cavs had 5 guys that made that list. Donovan Mitchell, who came in at number 9. And if you're watching on YouTube, I will be putting up the graphics right now. Donovan Mitchell at number 9. Evan Mobley came in at number 16. Darius Garland came in at number 27, all the way down now into the 50s, where Jarrett Allen at number 57. And then the fifth and final member of the Cleveland Cavaliers to be in the top 100 was DeAndre Hunter, who was ranked at number 88. So what I want to talk about a little bit today is where do we expect those guys to be next year? And then I do want to talk about somebody that if we had to pick somebody currently on the Cavs that is not in the top 100 that could find their way into this list next year, who would it be? We'll get to that in segment number 3. But I want to start with Donovan Mitchell here and where he could be ranked, because I go through this list and I think the top 4 is there's a very clear gap between number 4 and then number 5 with Luka Doncic and Stephen Curry. Like, I think there's a canyon there. And I look at the rest of this list. Of the guys on this list, 5 through 10, who can Donovan Mitchell be better than next year? I don't think he's going to be better than Victor Wembanyama. I think Wemby is of this group. Wemby is the one that I think is the most likely candidate to jump up into the top 5. I do think Donovan is going to be better than Steph Curry this year. And I think that Donovan is going to be regarded, not, of course, all time, but regarded present day as a better basketball player than Steph Curry. I personally think that he is right now. I think Anthony Edwards is probably on the other end of that. I think right now, and it reflected it in my voting, it did not reflect it in the top 100 that we came out with, or it did not reflect it in the consensus, I should say. But I think Anthony Edwards at the end of this season will be looked at as a little bit better than Donovan Mitchell. I think Jalen Brunson is something that's going to be decided in the postseason. If the Cavs go to the finals next spring, Donovan Mitchell, I think, will be regarded as a better basketball player than Jalen Brunson. If the New York Knicks go to the finals, Jalen Brunson is going to remain ahead of Donovan Mitchell on this list. So I look at this and say, okay, well, I think Donovan could be still a top 10 caliber player. And obviously Jason Tatum is not going to play much, if at all, this season, which is a different discussion for a different podcast. But he's a difficult one to rank, I think, in large part because of that Achilles injury that he had. So if you go through the guys that are currently ahead of Donovan, who can he jump? I think he can jump Jalen Brunson. I think he can jump Steph Curry. I don't think he's going to jump Anthony Edwards, although like it wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world. But if Victor Wembanyama is healthy, I think that he remains ahead of Donovan Mitchell. So let's just say, for the sake of this discussion, that the Cavs go to the finals and Donovan jumps Jalen Brunson, and Donovan also jumps Steph Curry, but doesn't jump Anthony Edwards or Victor Wembanyama. So that would put him up to 7. Now, who from behind Donovan Mitchell could jump over him. Let's look over at the next group of players where Kevin Durant is number 11. I don't necessarily think he is going to jump over Donovan Mitchell. LeBron James is number 12. I would be very surprised if he has a year that is first team All NBA caliber. I expect him to be very good still, but he's not one that I think we're going to look at a year from now and say, yes, that guy right now better than Donovan Mitchell right now. Tyrese Halliburton, not going to play basketball next season, so that one is just not really worth discussing. Anthony Davis, I'd be very, very surprised. But we get to 15 and 16. And I think these are really the two guys that I look at and say, yes, Cade Cunningham and Evan Mobley are the two guys that I think could make a considerable jump up these rankings. And I've talked about it several times on this show where I think if the Cavs win the title this year, maybe Donovan Mitchell is still the best player on the team, but it means Evan Mobley took another step forward too. Or even if they get out of the Eastern Conference, and Evan, I think it's fair to say, has that type of ceiling. The fact that right now he is the number 16 player in basketball, obviously a very impressive thing. But I look at this and say, okay, could he jump Donovan Mitchell next year? Like a year from now, could we be looking at this and saying Evan Mobley right now is better at basketball than Donovan Mitchell is? I don't know. I think it's possible, but I don't know if that's going to be a thing that we look at and say, yes, this will happen. Cade Cunningham, I think, is in a very similar boat. I think there might be a better chance that Cade does it because there's going to be more on his shoulders in Detroit, and he's going to have, I think, more of an opportunity to really just take command of a franchise the way that he has in Detroit. And because the Cavs are so good, that need is not there for Evan Mobley to do. And I do think that impacts the way people view these things. So I look at this and say, okay, well, I think Cade could potentially surpass Donovan Mitchell next year. I think Evan Mobley could potentially surpass Donovan Mitchell next year. Kawhi Leonard, I think, is a no. Devin Booker, I think, is a no. Karl Anthony Towns, I think, is a strong no. Jalen Williams might be another guy that I say, yeah, I could see that guy making a climb up the list, but playing alongside Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the rest of that Oklahoma City team, I don't think that he's somebody that we look at and say, yes, that guy is going to be considered a top 7 to 10 player in basketball. I just think that is a little bit too high of a climb. And then as we get further down, there's one more name that I think is worth bringing up here before I move on to the rest of the Cavaliers. But that name is Paolo Banchero, because I think he has a very unique opportunity in Orlando, where he is somebody that is already been highly regarded, despite the fact that Orlando has not had any postseason success. And he is not somebody that I think has some sort of flawless game, right? Like, I don't view Paolo Banchero as some guy that is just a future MVP. I think he's a very, very good player. I think he's a future All-NBA player. But I think that with what Orlando has this year, they could be primed to have a big season, to win a lot of basketball games. And if that happens, I think there's a world in which some people consider Paolo Banchero 1 year from now to be a better basketball player than Donovan Mitchell. Now, I would very much... we have to see how it plays out. I would not expect that to happen, is where I would go with this. But I look at this top 10, and I think there might be a few guys that are currently ahead of Donovan that he could surpass next year, that honestly I would expect him to surpass next year. Those guys are primarily Stephen Curry and Jalen Brunson, because I think the Cavs are going to be better than the Knicks, and I think the Cavs will have a better postseason. I think ultimately if they meet the Knicks in the postseason, I think they would win that series. Of course, it is September 8th as I record this. We won't find out about that until mid-May, so we have a long time to talk about that quite a bit. But if that happens, I think he'd be considered to be better than Jalen Brunson, ahead of Jalen Brunson. And I think that what Steph Curry is right now is obviously on his way, on the back nine of his career. He's not what he once was. I think number 5 in the NBA is a little high for my liking. I think he's like borderline a top 10 player. I thought number 5 was just a little bit extreme. Now, I talked about Evan Mobley moving up. Who are other guys that could be in that same ballpark with him? Should he be considered a top 10 player? Surefire next year. What about Darius Garland? We'll talk about that next right here on Locked on Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is back. Well, FanDuel never left. Football is back is what I meant to say, because the NFL season is here. We had an incredible Sunday night football game. Oh my goodness. Buffalo, Baltimore. Watching Baltimore blow the game like that was delightful, dare I say. Even if I picked Baltimore to win that game on FanDuel, it was still delightful, even though I lost, and it wasn't my first $5 bet. So it didn't hurt that much because I did not have the $300 in bonus bets that would have hit my account had I won. But man, watching the Ravens blow that game was simply delightful. I do have to say so. And we will have, as you could guess, more football coming later this week. The Baltimore Ravens are going to be hosting the Cleveland Browns, the team that, if you listen to this podcast, might be the one that you cheer for. If you're like me, and that is the case, one, I feel terrible for you, because this is not a fun existence watching what happened on Sunday happen over and over again. They just find new ways every single week. That is not necessarily the most fun thing. And they go to Baltimore. And as I record this right now, the Browns are 11.5-point underdogs, which, hey, you guessed it, is the largest spread for any game in the NFL next week. So maybe you think, well, last year, the Baltimore Ravens played in a thrilling week 1 game, and then they were a little bit hungover for the second week. Maybe the Browns can cover that. I don't know that I would go quite that far. But if you are new to FanDuel, what you should do right now, make your first $5 bet. Make it, win it. Because if you win that first $5 bet, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. If you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app right now and head on over to FanDuel.com. That is FanDuel.com to get started. Again, FanDuel.com to place your very first $5 bet with the chance of winning $300 in bonus bets if you win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. And like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. And I would appreciate very much if you did subscribe to this podcast feed on whatever podcast platform is your preferred one. As we mentioned in the first segment, Evan Mobley comes in at number 16. And next year, I would not be surprised if Evan leapfrogs the likes of LeBron James, Tyrese Halliburton, solely because of the injury, and Tyrese is not going to play. I think Anthony Davis is the big one. And right now, Anthony Davis is 2 spots ahead of Evan Mobley. Anthony Davis, number 14, Evan Mobley, number 16. I think that is something that Anthony Davis is a very, very good player on both ends of the floor. I think that there are people in and around the NBA that expect Evan Mobley to be sort of the next version of Anthony Davis. And if you're the Cavs, you certainly hope that he is a healthier version of that, because the drawback on Anthony Davis's career has always been about the injury stuff, right? It's always been that he misses too much time, that when he's healthy, he's fantastic. It's just the health has been an issue. And for Evan, there has been some health issues, but for the most part, he has been a guy that has stayed relatively healthy, which of course is a very, very good sign. But I look at that first 4 that are currently up on the page if you're watching on YouTube: Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Tyrese Halliburton, Anthony Davis. And I think with a good year, Evan Mobley could surpass all of those guys. I think he could surpass Cade Cunningham. That's the one that I probably wouldn't bet on happening for reasons I explained in the first segment, as far as maybe Cade could even jump Donovan Mitchell. But I look at this and just think, with what Evan's potential is and how good he is, I think that he's going to be somebody that we're going to look at and say, that guy at a certain point is knocking on the door of being a top 5 player. I don't think that that'll be a year from now. I think that a year from now, we'll be talking about Evan Mobley knocking on the door, or perhaps Evan Mobley being a top 10 player, and top 5 is a couple of years down the road, because I do think that being considered a top 10 player in the NBA and being considered a top 5 player in the NBA are 2 very, very different things. I actually think there's a wide gap there. I think there's probably like 17 guys right now that you can make the case are top 10 players in the NBA. And I also think right now there are 4 guys that you could make the case are top 4 players in the NBA. I just think that makes it a really, really difficult place to get to. But I think if Evan goes out and has the year that everyone internally, and certainly everyone that I talk to, expect Evan Mobley to have, I do think that him being a top 10 player next year not only is not out of the question, I think that should be the expectation for the Cavs. I think if you're a Cavs fan, you should expect 1 year from now that I'm talking about Evan Mobley not being on this page right here between 11 and 20, but rather finding himself on this page somewhere between 1 and 10. Again, 1 through 4, a little too lofty. Not going to happen next year. 1 through 5, probably not going to happen next year. But could he find himself somewhere between 6 and 10? It's not the craziest thing. It's really not the craziest thing. Now, as for Darius Garland, he came in at number 27 overall in our top 100. And he is somebody else that I do think has a little bit of room for some upwards movement. Now, you look at the guys ahead of him on this list. I already talked a little bit about Paolo Banchero. Pascal Siakam, I think, is a very interesting one just because I'm not entirely sure what the Indiana Pacers are going to be this year. And Jaylen Brown, I think, might be a guy that is a little underrated in this list. I think, personally, I think he's a little bit better than 21. But so I'm not sure that those are the guys that he's going to jump. Paolo Banchero, of course not. But James Harden, I get to at number 24 and think a year from now, as James Harden ages a little bit and Darius Garland gets closer, theoretically, to what his prime in the NBA should be, should Darius Garland be considered better than James Harden? Right now, I can't necessarily say. I think it's very, very close. But a year from now, I do think that Darius Garland should be, if he goes out and has a good year. And of course, the health needs to be something that cooperates. But I think that is a guy that he could move up. Jaren Jackson Jr., a very good player, very hard to evaluate because they are so drastically different as basketball players. Maybe Trae Young. This is where I think it's a very interesting area. And I talked about this yesterday. Trae Young at 26, Darius Garland 27, Ja Morant at 28. And even if you include James Harden at 24, you've got 4 all-star caliber guards in a 5-slot tier, we'll call it. And right now, if you had to ask teams, and I think that this is a fun way to go about this, if you polled anonymously all 30 lead basketball decision makers, so your GMs, your presidents of basketball operations, the way Kobe Altman is, if you polled the lead decision maker of every franchise in the NBA right now, how would they rank that list? If they had to select a point guard for their team, who would they pick from that list? I don't know that it's in this order. I think given age, James Harden is and of course, postseason quality, I think James Harden probably not first on this list. Ja Morant, I think, is a very interesting one because there's no question that he's a very, very good talent, but he does bring a lot of baggage and is not necessarily somebody that can be trusted with your franchise. Trae Young, I think it comes down to Trae Young and Darius Garland for these 2 spots. And Atlanta is expected to have a very, very good year. They did a lot of really good things this offseason. Obviously, adding Kristaps Porzingis, adding Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They should be a very, very good team. The Cavs, obviously, also should be a very, very good team. I don't know that this is going to come down to, well, the Cavs are going to have a better record. That gives Darius Garland the opportunity to jump him. I think if Darius Garland goes out next year and has a great postseason, then I think we're saying, okay, you know what? Maybe Darius Garland is the top 25 player in basketball, but I look at where he's currently at right now, and I don't know that there's a ton of room for him to move up. Could he be top 20? Maybe, but I do look at this and say he might move up a couple of spots, but I don't know if there's room for him to make a huge jump way up to a top 15 player. I think at some point, Darius Garland will make an all-NBA team, probably be a 3rd-team all-NBA player. I don't think he's done making all-star teams, but I also don't think that Darius Garland is ever going to be considered a top 15 player in basketball, at least not while Donovan Mitchell is in Cleveland. If those 2 are teammates for the rest of their careers, it's hard for me to see. Now, maybe at a certain point, this will flip just because of the age difference between the 2. But I look at it and say, at least for the next couple of years, Darius Garland is going to be the 2nd best guard on his own team. And that is a difficult thing to really climb up this leaderboard, if you will, when you have that designation. But I do think that a year from now, Darius Garland could be in a little bit better of a spot than he is right now. Now, there are 2 more guys, Jarrett Allen and DeAndre Hunter, that both made the top 100. We'll talk about them, whether or not they can move up. Plus, one guy in the Cavs, not on this list, not even saying I expect him to be on this list next year, But if I had to pick one guy who's not on the list right now from the Cavs that will be next year, who would that be? I'll tell you next, right here on Locked On Cavs. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first watch or listen today and every day. And if you are watching the show on YouTube, the best way you can help grow this channel, first, hit the like button on this video, the very video you're watching right now, and then hit the subscribe button right by it and subscribe to Locked On Cavs. It is the very best way you can help grow the Locked On Cavs YouTube channel. We already went through Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, Darius Garland. Jarrett Allen was the number 4 Cav to be mentioned on our NBA Top 100 Players list. He came in at number 57. He is near the likes of Rudy Gobert, Joel Embiid, Draymond Green, Damian Lillard, Lauri Markkanen, Trey Murphy, Jarrett Allen, 57. Austin Reeves, 58, right behind him. Mikal Bridges, Norm Powell at number 60, and then go through 61 through 70. Dyson Daniels, Denny Avdia, Brandon Ingram, Fred VanVleet, Jaden McDaniels, Zach LaVine, Jalen Suggs, Alex Caruso, DeMar DeRozan, and Isaiah Hartenstein. Now, I look at this list, and I think if there's a member of the Cavaliers that is most likely to drop next year and fall down the list a little bit, I think it's Jarrett Allen. And I know what you're probably thinking. Oh, of course, Danny's saying it's Jarrett Allen. He has been talking since he took over Locked On Cavs about the Cavs trading Jarrett Allen and what that could do for the team. And yes, I have been saying that. But I've not been saying that because Jarrett Allen's not good. I've been saying that, and this connects to this conversation, because I think for Evan Mobley to get the most out of Evan Mobley, for the Cavs to get the most out of Evan Mobley, that at times is going to mean less Jarrett Allen. And I think anytime you're talking about, yeah, maybe that guy shouldn't play quite as much, or maybe that guy shouldn't close out games all the time, it becomes a thing that says, oh, you know what? Maybe that guy's not a top 60 player in basketball. It wouldn't mean Jarrett Allen's not good, because he's still very, very good. But I think that when you look at Evan Mobley growing, the better he gets, I think it means the less that the Cavs are going to, one, need from Jarrett Allen, and two, command from Jarrett Allen. And as that happens, I think that how the rest of the NBA views Jarrett Allen might change just a little bit. And also, if we're being honest, 1 year from now, I would not be surprised if Jarrett Allen is on a team that's not the Cleveland Cavaliers. That would not be the most shocking thing to me. And I think that him potentially falling down this list has a little bit more to do with Evan Mobley than it does with Jarrett Allen himself. That is just one thing to keep in mind. And it doesn't mean he's a bad player. It just means Evan Mobley, being as good as he is going to have some repercussions elsewhere across the roster. And then the last guy in the top 100, DeAndre Hunter, who comes in at number 88. He is behind Naz Reid at number 80, Brandon Miller at number 82, Josh Giddey at number 83, Herb Jones number 84, Asar Thompson number 85, Emmanuel Quickley number 86, Josh Hart number 87. He is number 88. Just behind him, Bradley Beal number 89, and then Aaron Nesmith number 90. There were a few guys ahead of DeAndre that I thought should not be. Like, I think that he is better right now than Brandon Miller. I would rather have DeAndre Hunter than Josh Giddey. Asar Thompson is somebody that I think is going to jump up this list next year. Emmanuel Quickley, I would rather have DeAndre Hunter. I just think that the way he impacts winning is going to be on display. He's not going to ever be thought of as a top 50 player in basketball. I don't think that is in his future. But I do think that in terms of volume, he could move up the most. And part of that is because, the most Evan Mobley could move up is 15 spots to number 1. The most that Donovan Mitchell could move up is 8 spots to number 1. I don't expect either of those things to happen. Obviously, like Darius Garland theoretically could move up 26 spots to be the NBA's best player. That is not going to happen. But I just think, like, reasonably, could DeAndre Hunter move up 15 spots next year? Could he be, instead of in the 81 to 90 range, in this range, somewhere in the 61 to 70 range? I don't think that's a crazy thought. I don't think it's crazy. If you look at somebody like Jaden McDaniels at number 65, I do not think it's crazy if those two, if Jaden McDaniels and DeAndre Hunter, have very, very similar seasons next year. Now, Jaden is, I think, a better defensive player than who DeAndre Hunter is. I think DeAndre is a relatively good, but not great defensive player. I think that was maybe a little bit overrated coming into Cleveland, but I also look and say, well, DeAndre, I do think is a significantly better offensive player than Jaden McDaniels, where McDaniels is a 34% career three-point shooter, shot 33% last year in Minnesota. And then you look at what DeAndre Hunter has done offensively throughout his career, where he is a 37% three-point shooter, shot 40% from beyond the arc last year, including just under 43% while he was in Cleveland last year. And I just think, okay, that's a guy that I could see him surpassing. I could see that being a thing. But I also look at it and say, well, this might be the most volatile area of the top 100 because so many of these names could move up, could move down, and I think are in the same boat or a similar boat as to what DeAndre Hunter is in for this upcoming season. Now, those are the 5 that are in the top 100 from the Cavs. And let's just say that they had to add somebody to this list. And you look through who is currently on the roster, you look through what this team is going to be and what we expect the Cavs to be this year. And I think this becomes a very interesting discussion. Now, you could say, well, Max Strus is borderline a top 100 player. He should be on this list next year. Okay, well, he's also going to miss a good chunk of the season because of his foot injury. Not what I would bet on. Lonzo Ball is a top 100 talent. That I think is fair, but the disclaimer I have to put out every time, if he is healthy, and I don't know what that's going to look like. The guy that I look at and say, could he be a top 100 player next year? And this is not something I would bet on happening, but I think the opportunity for Jaylon Tyson to sneak in to the back end of this list is real because he is going to have a significant opportunity this year for the Cavs. He's going to, I think, see a good deal of minutes while Max Strus is out. And as we know, no team stays healthy all season long. I think that year 2 for Jaylon Tyson is a big opportunity. As I mentioned, I wouldn't bet on him being a top 100 player a year from now. But if somebody on the Cavs moved from outside the top 100 to inside the top 100, I think he's the answer. I don't think it's Max. I don't think it's Dean Wade. I don't think it's Craig Porter Jr. I already went through Lonzo Ball. Tyrese Proctor has never played a game in the NBA. I don't think it's Sam Merrill. I don't think it's Larry Nance Jr. I don't think it's going to happen for Jaylon Tyson. But of all those names, he's the one that could kind of come out of nowhere and make that sort of surprise. I think he is the one capable of doing it. He's a former first-round pick without any real legitimate NBA experience. But he's going to get an opportunity this year. He's going to be asked to step up in a big way. If that happens, let's say 1 year from now, we're talking about the Cavs having 6 guys in the top 100. Jaylon Tyson would be the 6th and would also probably mean really good stuff happen for the Cavs, probably including winning the NBA title in June. Thank you for making today's edition of Locked On Cavs your first listen, and thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen every single day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Make sure to drop us a 5-star rating, leave us a nice review, and of course, be a friend. Tell a friend about Locked On Cavs. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure a friend is subscribed as well. And if you're watching this show on YouTube, as we get out of here, do us a favor. Hit that thumbs up button for us. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell. And I'll be back tomorrow talking more about the Cleveland Cavaliers.